The child in the dirt the city was dying. Smoke curled into the sky like black snakes, and the air tasted of ash. Buildings leaned at broken angles, some still burning, others silent as tombs. Every few seconds, far-off explosions shook the ground, sending dust falling from the shattered walls. Daniel Cross moved through the ruins slowly, his boots crunching on glass. His breath was loud inside his helmet, and the air filter hummed, struggling against the poison in the atmosphere. He had been sent here to repair a damaged comms relay. But the war had arrived before he could even open his toolkit. Now, there were no signals, only screams. He kept his rifle ready, though he had no wish to fight. He was just a human engineer, not a soldier. But on a world like this, you didn't walk around without a weapon. A faint sound reached him, not a scream, not gunfire. It was softer, weak, almost like the cry of an animal. He stopped, holding his breath. There it was again. Daniel turned toward a narrow alley between two collapsed buildings. The sound came from deeper inside, hidden by shadows. He hesitated. Going in there could mean walking into an ambush. But then he heard it again, a whimper. Slowly, he stepped into the alley. The light from the burning buildings didn't reach far, and his helmet lamp lit the narrow walls on both sides. Debris covered the ground. Metal scraps, broken glass, splintered wood. Halfway in, he saw a small figure lying against the wall. At first, he thought it was a pile of rags. Then it moved. It was a child. Her skin was pale blue, almost gray under the dirt and blood. Her eyes were half open, unfocused, shining faintly in the dark. Her breathing was shallow, her chest barely moving. She couldn't have been older than 7 in human years. Daniel knelt beside her, scanning for injuries. She was badly hurt. A deep cut on her side, bruises along her arms, and burns on her legs. The blood on her lips told him she had internal injuries. The girl looked at him, eyes wide with fear. She tried to move away, but her body was too weak. She whispered something in a language he didn't understand, clutching a small necklace around her neck. The pendant glowed faintly like a dying star. Daniel's mind raced. Helping her would be dangerous. She was clearly alien, and this was alien territory. If her people found her with him, they might think he had hurt her. But she coughed. The sound thin and wet, and her small fingers reached out weakly. Toward him, Daniel felt something twist in his chest. He had seen enough death these past months. He wasn't about to leave a child to die alone in the dirt. "I've got you," he said softly, even though she couldn't understand. He slipped his arms under her and lifted her gently. She was so light, it scared him. Head rested against his chest, and he could feel her shivering through his armor. A distant roar echoed overhead. Daniel looked up, and his heart sank. Through the smoke, the dark shapes of warships moved across the sky, their hulls glowing with engine heat. The girl stirred weakly, whispering something again. This time, Daniel caught 2 words in broken English. Mother. Combs. Her voice was so soft, he almost missed the last part. She will destroy. Daniel didn't have time to ask what she meant. The warships were getting closer, there. Engines like thunder. He adjusted his grip on the girl and began running toward where he'd left his small transport. The streets were chaos, people running, soldiers shouting, gunfire rattling through the ruins. He kept moving, weaving between broken walls and piles of rubble, trying to stay out of sight. A blast hit somewhere nearby, throwing him off his feet. He landed hard, shielding the girl with his body. She whimpered, clutching his chest plate. Daniel pushed himself up and kept going. His transport wasn't far now. He reached the edge of the landing zone and froze above. One massive ship had stopped moving. Its shadow covered the ruins below. A deep hum filled the air, the sound of weapons charging. Daniel didn't know But far above, on the bridge of that ship, an alien woman stood watching him on a holographic display. Her armor was black and gold, her eyes sharp as blades. This was General Sarika Vihar, one of the most feared warlords in the galaxy. And the child in Daniel's arms was her daughter. She didn't care why a human had her child. She only knew one thing: someone would pay. The hum of the ship's weapon grew louder. Shaking the ground, Daniel tightened his grip on the girl and muttered, "Hold on." Because whatever was coming next. They were both running out of time. The hunt begins. The hum of the warship's weapons faded, replaced by the sharp hiss of Daniel's own breathing. He ducked into the shadow of a crumbling wall, clutching the child close. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes stayed fixed on the sky, as if she knew exactly who was up there. Daniel checked the scanner on his wrist, a flicker of green, then static. The signal jammers were active. That meant he couldn't call for help, couldn't send a distress message. He was on his own. He moved quickly through the ruins, sticking to narrow alleys where the warships couldn't get a direct shot. His transport was only a few streets away, hidden under debris to avoid attracting scavengers. If he could just reach it. A sudden tremor shook the ground, followed by a blast of wind that nearly knocked him off his feet. Something massive had landed nearby. He didn't need to guess what far above. Inside the warship's command center, General Sarika Vihar stood before a massive holographic map of the city. Red markers pulsed where her troops had landed. At the center of the display was a moving white dot. Daniel. Her eyes narrowed. "Is this the human?" she asked. A soldier bowed his head. "Yes, General. He carries the star." Jaw tightened. Her voice was cold enough to freeze air. "Alive. I want him alive. He will explain how he touched my daughter before I end him." Her orders rippled through the fleet. Troops began moving in from all directions, like wolves, closing on prey. Daniel didn't know who was hunting him, but he could feel it. The air seemed heavier, charged with danger. The girl stirred in his arms, her small fingers gripping his armor. He glanced down. "You still with me?" Her lips moved. "Don't. Stop." That was all he needed to hear. He pushed harder, ignoring the ache in his legs. The streets ahead were blocked by fallen beams and burning rubble. Forcing him to take a detour, it was a mistake. Two figures stepped into the alley ahead. Tall, armored aliens with curved rifles aimed at his chest. Their helmets hid their faces, but Daniel could feel their cold stares. Hand over the air. One of them ordered in a deep, metallic voice. Daniel shook his head. "She's hurt. She needs." They didn't let him finish. Stepped forward, Daniel didn't think he acted. His hand shot to his sidearm, firing twice. The blasts hit the alien's armor, staggering him back. The second soldier raised his weapon, but Daniel threw himself into a roll, keeping the girl shielded in his arms. He came up firing again. The alien dropped to the ground, weapon clattering away. Daniel's heart pounded. He wasn't a killer. It never wanted to be. But he also wasn't going to let anyone take her. He ran before reinforcements arrived. By the time he reached his transport, his arms ached from carrying her, and his throat burned from breathing through the mask. The small ship was half hidden under sheets of scrap metal, its hull scorched from the last battle. He placed the girl gently in the passenger seat, checking her pulse. Still weak. Still fading. Daniel powered up the engines, the low whine filled. The cabin, along with a warning light engine core, unstable. He cursed under his breath. It didn't matter. If they stayed here, they'd both be dead. The ship lifted shakily from the ground, scattering debris. The moment it rose above the rooftops, the sky erupted with tracer fire. Daniel jerked the controls, weaving between collapsed buildings to avoid the incoming shots. One blast hit the rear thruster. shaking the cabin so violently that the girl whimpered. "Almost there," he muttered, as if saying it might make it true. On the warship, Styrka watched the humans' desperate flight. Something about the way he shielded her daughter from gunfire made her hesitate. For a moment, the thought crossed her mind. Perhaps he wasn't an enemy, but that thought died quickly. She had lived too long, seen too much. Follow him, force him into open space. He won't escape the blockade. Her fleet moved like a tightening net. Daniel broke free of the burning city and shot upward, pushing the ship harder than was safe. The sky turned from gray to black, stars appearing like cold fire in the distance. Then his stomach dropped. Ahead, dozens of ships formed a wall of steel, blocking the hyperspace lane. He checked the scanner. The blockade was solid. No gaps. The girl stirred, opening her eyes just enough to whisper, "Mother ships." Daniel didn't know how she knew, but he believed her. And now he understood what she'd said before. If her mother was behind this, then running into that blockade would be suicide. But staying meant death too. His mind raced. There was only one option, a dangerous hyperspace jump using the old coordinates stored in his nav computer. No one used that route anymore because it cut too close to a collapsing star. But maybe that's why they wouldn't expect. He locked in the course. The engine screamed as the ship turned toward the dark stretch of space. Behind him, alien ships broke formation to give chase. Daniel glanced at the girl, who was watching him with tired eyes. "Hang on," he said. The ship leaped forward, stars stretching into lines. And for a moment, the hunt was left behind. Escape through fire, the hyperspace jump was not smooth. The ship shuddered violently as if an invisible hand was trying to pull it apart. Daniel gritted his teeth, holding the controls steady while glancing at the small alien girl strapped in beside him. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow. He knew the route was dangerous. The nav computer screamed gravity hazard in flashing red, but it was the only way past the blockade. Outside the viewport, the tunnel of light was fractured, streaked with dark swirls that bent unnaturally. Somewhere nearby, a dying star was collapsing into a black hole. Daniel kept one eye on the coordinates and one on the girl. "Just a little longer," he muttered, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince her, or himself. Far behind, in normal space, General Sarika Vihar stood before her star map, fists clenched. He used the forbidden corridor. Her tactical officer reported. "Send a pursuit wing," Sarika snapped. The officer hesitated. "My general, that route is unstable. We could lose ships." Sarika's voice cut like steel. "I said pursue." 3 sleek hunter craft broke formation, jumping after the human. Their pilots were the best in her fleet, and they had orders to return only with her daughter in their custody. Back in the cockpit, Daniel's relief at escaping the blockade vanished as a warning beep sounded. The long-range scanner picked up 3 signatures, closing fast. He swore under his breath. They're not giving up. The dying star loomed ahead now, an angry red sphere tearing itself apart, chunks of molten matter spinning away into the black. Streams of light bent and warped around it, making navigation a nightmare. The girl stirred weakly. "They, well, kill you," she whispered. Daniel glanced at her. "Not if I get us out first." But the hunter craft were already firing. Blue plasma bolts streaked past the viewport, one grazing the wing and sending the ship into a roll. Daniel fought the controls, stabilizing the craft just in time to dive between 2 massive chunks of rock drifting near the star. Inside one of the hunter craft, the alien pilots snarled into the comm, "Drive him toward the gravity well. If the star doesn't tear his ship apart, we'll finish him." They split into formation, one above, one below. one behind, herding him like prey toward the most dangerous part of the corridor. Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't outgun them, couldn't outrun them in open space. But maybe he could use the collapsing star's chaos against them. He dove sharply, skimming the edge of a glowing debris field. The heat alarms screamed, and the hull's temperature began to rise, but the rocks gave him cover. Plasma bolts exploded against the larger chunks, showering his ship in sparks. One of the hunters got too close, and a spinning mass of molten rock smashed into its wing. The alien ship spiraled out of control and vanished into the black hole's pole. One down. Daniel muttered, gripping the controls tighter. The remaining two hunters adapted quickly. Closing the gap again. The girl's voice was soft, almost dreamlike mother ships. They will never stop. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't want to think about what her mother might do if she caught him. Instead, he spotted an opening, a narrow gap between two gravitational eddies, where space itself twisted unnaturally. The nav computer warned him it was suicidal. He smiled grimly. Good. Pushing the throttle to maximum, he aimed straight for the gap. The hunters followed, but the twisting gravity pulled at their formation. One overcompensated and slammed into a shard of spinning debris, bursting into flame before disintegrating. The last hunter stayed locked on him, its weapons flashing. A bolt hit Daniel's rear thruster, making the whole ship lurch. The alarms went wild. Daniel ignored them. They were seconds from the gap. At the last moment, he cut the main engines and let the ship drift, spinning sideways. The hunter's pilot misread the move and overshot, sliding into the gravity trap first. The twisting pull grabbed the alien craft and crushed it like paper. Daniel reignited the engines, the shockwave from the hunter's destruction giving him the push he needed to break through the gap. Suddenly, the turbulence vanished. Stars stretched into normal lines again. They were back in open space. Daniel exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. He looked at the girl. She was still breathing, still alive. "We made it," he said quietly. On the bridge of her warship, Serica stared at the tactical display where the signals of her hunters had just winked out. The human had survived. A route that should have killed him. Her anger burned hotter. But beneath it was something else. Interest. Daniel checked his nav computer. The nearest safe harbor was a neutral trade station. He'd have to risk going there for medical help. The girl wouldn't last much longer without treatment. He set the course. Outside, the stars seemed peaceful again. But he knew the truth. Somewhere out there, the girl's mother was still coming. Refuge or trap, the stars blurred past as Daniel's ship drifted toward the neutral trade station. From the outside, the station looked peaceful, a giant ring of metal and glass hanging in space, lit by hundreds of blinking lights. Freighters and passenger liners came and went in steady streams, but Daniel had been to enough neutral places to know the truth. Nothing in the galaxy was truly safe. The girl sat in the passenger seat, her head resting against the wall. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes were half open now, watching him with a quiet focus. Every so often, she gripped the glowing pendant around her neck, as if it gave her strength. "You'll be all right," Daniel said, though he wasn't. Sure, he believed it. "We just need to get you inside. They'll have doctors." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked out at the station and whispered in her own language, words Daniel couldn't understand. But her tone carried a warning. They docked without trouble. The station's airlock hissed open, and the clean, recycled air hit him like a wave. Inside, the corridors bustled with beings of every shape and size. Traders, smugglers, and drifters from dozens of worlds. Bright signs lit the ceiling, promising everything from fresh food to discreet cargo transfers. Daniel kept the girl close as they pushed through the crowd. Some aliens glanced at her, and then at him, their eyes lingering. He tried to ignore it. The medical bay was on the upper ring. When they arrived, the receptionist, a tall insectoid with glassy black eyes, looked at the girl and froze. Her antennae twitched. "Where did you find her?" the insectoid asked. Voice sharp. Daniel kept his tone calm. "She was hurt. I'm here for treatment." The receptionist's eyes darted to the glowing pendant around the girl's neck. Our mandibles clicked nervously. Then, without another word, she called for the doctors. 2 alien medics rushed in. They didn't just start treatment. They bowed. Star War whispered in awe. Daniel frowned. Star War. Star War. What does that mean? Neither answered. They moved quickly, scanning the girl and beginning treatment. Daniel stood back, uneasy. He had a bad feeling now. If these doctors recognized her, then others would too, and word would spread fast. Sure enough, he wasn't wrong. In a shadowed corner of the station's lower levels, a small group of rough-looking aliens were already whispering about the news. The human brought in the star. One said, his voice a low growl. "Her bounty is worth more than a warship." Another replied, "Her mother will pay in blood or gold." They didn't care which. Up in the medbay, the girl's breathing had improved. She opened her eyes fully now, studying Daniel. Her voice was soft but clear. "You did not trade me," she said slowly, in halting English. Daniel almost laughed, though there was no humor in it. "No, I'm not in the habit of selling kids." She tilted her head as if trying to understand. "Others would." "Yeah," he admitted, "others would." Before he could say more, a low alarm buzzed from the reception desk. The insectoid receptionist looked up, her eyes wide. "Docking alert," she said. "A warship just arrived. No ID codes, and it's big." Daniel's stomach tightened. The girl's hand gripped his sleeve. "Mother," she whispered. In the void outside, the massive shadow of General Sarika Vihar's flagship slid into view. It made every other ship nearby look like toys. Its hull was black and gold, bristling with weapon batteries. Inside, Sarika stepped onto her landing craft. She had come herself. Daniel knew they had minutes, maybe less, before she found them. He turned to the medics. "Is she stable?" One nodded reluctantly. "Yes, but moving her could. She's coming with me." Daniel cut in. The girl didn't resist when he lifted her into his arms again. But her eyes never left the door, as if she could already see her mother walking through it. They didn't make it far. Halfway down the corridor, 3 armored figures blocked their path. Not soldiers, bounty hunters. Their armor was mismatched, their weapons old but deadly. One grinned, showing too many teeth. "Hand her over, human. Save yourself a slow death." Daniel shifted his grip on the girl. Not happening. The lead hunter raised his blaster. Last chance, a sudden blast of wind and a deep metallic thud cut him off. The air around them seemed to grow heavier. From the far end of the corridor, a tall, dark-armored figure stepped forward. Each footstep echoing. Her helmet retracted, revealing sharp, regal features and eyes like molten gold. General Sarika Vihar had arrived. The bounty hunters froze. Even they knew better than to stand in her way. Without a word, they backed off, vanishing into the crowd. Sarika's gaze locked on Daniel. Then, slowly, it dropped to the girl in his arms. For the first time, her face changed, not anger, but something closer to relief. The girl whispered something in her own language. Sarika's eyes narrowed at the words, then flicked back to Daniel. She stepped closer, towering over him. Her voice was low and dangerous. "You will come with me, human." I love a confrontation. Corridor was silent, except for the hum of the station's lights. Daniel stood frozen. The alien girl still in his arms, as General Sarika Vihar closed the distance between them. Every step she took was measured, deliberate, like a predator that already knew its prey couldn't escape. Her armor gleamed black and gold under the ceiling lights. The plates were scarred from battles long past, yet they looked as unbreakable as the woman wearing them. Her golden eyes never wavered from Daniel's face. "You will come with me," she repeated, her voice low but carrying the weight of a command. Daniel's fingers tightened around the girl. "She's hurt. She needs care. She has been given care," Serica replied without looking away. "And now she will be returned to her blood." Daniel took a slow step back. "And what happens to me?" Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That depends entirely on your answers." The crowd had thinned now. Most civilians had hurried away, not wanting to be caught between the most feared warlord in the sector and a human holding her heir. The few that remained watched from a distance, whispering nervously. The girl looked between them, her small hands gripping Daniel's armor. In her own language, she spoke quickly to Serica. Daniel couldn't understand, but the way the general's jaw tightened told him the words mattered. "What did she say?" "She says you saved her," Serica replied. "That you did not harm her, that you carried her through fire." Her tone shifted, colder again. "I will decide if this is truth." Two armored soldiers stepped forward from behind her. Serica gave them a short nod. One extended a gauntleted hand toward Daniel. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to move, to run. But where would he go? The station was surrounded. If he resisted, they'd kill him on the spot, or worse. Still, his voice stayed steady. "Am I not handing her over unless I know she's safe?" Serica's gaze sharpened. "You dare set conditions with me, human?" Daniel met her eyes. "Yeah, I do." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then something unexpected happened. Serica raised her hand, signaling her soldiers to stand down. She stepped closer, close enough that Daniel could see the faint scar along her cheek, a mark from some old battle. "Very well. You will come aboard my flagship. She will remain in your sight until I am satisfied. But understand this," her voice dropped to a growl. "If you attempt escape, there will be no second warning." Daniel didn't like the terms, but they were better than being shot in the back. He nodded once. Serica turned, her cape brushing the floor, and began walking toward the docking bay. The soldiers moved to flank Daniel, but they didn't touch him. The girl stayed in his arms, her eyes still fixed on her mother as they walked. Daniel noticed something odd. Station security didn't intervene, not even to question the abduction of a man in their port. Instead, they simply turned away. He realized then that Serica's power wasn't just in her fleet or her weapons. It was in the fear she carried with her. The docking bay was a cavern of steel and light. At the far end sat Serica's personal shuttle, sleek, angular, painted in the same black and gold as her armor. Daniel stepped aboard cautiously. The interior was all sharp lines and dark metal, the kind of design meant to impress as much as intimidate. He sat where a soldier motioned, the girl still in his arms. Serica took the seat across from him. The hum of the engines rose as the shuttle lifted off, leaving the station behind. Through the viewport, Daniel saw the massive bulk of her flagship, growing larger and larger until it filled the view entirely. "You are lucky," Serica said suddenly, breaking the silence. Daniel glanced at her. "Lucky?" "Yes," she replied. "If any other human had been found with my daughter, they would already be dead." Daniel didn't look away. If any other human had found her, she'd probably be dead too. Serica's eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. The girl shifted in Daniel's arms, speaking softly to her mother again. Serica listened, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned back in her seat, studying Daniel as if trying to solve a puzzle. "You carried her through battle. You fought my hunters. You even dared the forbidden corridor. For what? Daniel shrugged. She needed help. That is not an answer. It's the only one I've got. The shuttle slid into the docking bay of the flagship. Massive doors closed behind them, sealing out the void. The air smelled faintly of ozone and oil. Serica stood. You will remain under my watch until I decide what to do with you. Daniel rose slowly, the girl still holding onto him. Soldiers formed a tight circle around them as they stepped off the shuttle. The flagship's corridors were wide and lined with banners bearing the Vihar crest. Everywhere. Soldiers stopped and bowed their heads as Serica passed. Daniel realized something else. Every pair of eyes, alien and fierce, was also watching him. At the end of the hall, a massive set of doors slid open, revealing a chamber of dark stone and steel. This wasn't just a room, it was a throne hall. Serica stepped forward and turned to face him. You stand now in the heart of my power, human. Do not mistake my patience for weakness. Daniel met her gaze. I'm not here to play games. She's safe. That's all I care about. Serica's eyes narrowed, but there was the faintest flicker of something else. Curiosity. Then, she said slowly, we will see if you survive my judgment. The judgment the throne hall was vast and cold, lit by long beams of pale light streaming from the ceiling. Every step Daniel took echoed against the black stone floor. The air felt heavy, not just from the size of the room, but from the presence of the soldiers lining the walls. Dock at the far end. General Serica Vihar sat upon a raised throne made of dark metal, carved with sharp edges like a weapon. She rested. One hand on the armrest, the other on the hilt of a long ceremonial blade. Her golden eyes followed Daniel without blinking. The alien girl sat to her right. Wrapped in a clean robe now, but she refused to sit still. Her gaze stayed fixed on Daniel, as if afraid he might vanish if she looked away. Daniel stood before her. Throne flanked by two guards in heavy armor. Serica's voice filled the chamber. You are Daniel Cross, a human from the outer fringe. You were found carrying my daughter, the Star Heir, through the ruins of Galran City. You crossed the forbidden corridor and destroyed 3 of my huntercraft. Daniel didn't respond. Immediately. The list sounded worse when she said it aloud. I saved her. He said, finally. That, Serica replied, is what you claim. But in my world, we do not act without reason. And humans? Her gaze narrowed. Humans rarely risk their lives without payment. Daniel's jaw tightened. Sometimes people help because it's the right thing to do. Her eyes flicked. Toward the girl, is that so? The child sat straighter, speaking quickly in her own language. Daniel couldn't understand, but her tone was fierce, almost angry. Serica listened without interrupting. A flicker of emotion, something softer, passed through her eyes before vanishing. She rose from the throne. The sound of her boots striking the steps made Daniel's pulse quicken. She descended until she stood directly in front of him, her presence almost overwhelming. You say you saved her, Serica said. Prove it. Daniel blinked. How? She gestured, and one of the guards stepped forward, carrying a long, narrow device. It projected a shimmering field of light in the air, a memory scanner. Daniel frowned. You want to dig through my head? Yes, Serica said simply. It will show us the truth. If you speak it, you have nothing to fear. And if I refuse? Her voice lowered, cold as deep space. Then you will be judged as an enemy of the Vihar Empire and executed. Daniel glanced at the girl. She was watching him with wide, anxious eyes. He sighed. Fine, do it. The guard pressed the device against the side of his head. A flash of light and images began to appear in the air. Daniel pushing through the ruined city. Finding the girl in the dirt, lifting her into his arms, they saw him shielding her from debris. carrying her through burning streets, refusing to hand her to the station governor. They saw the chase through the collapsing star corridor, the hunter craft exploding in his wake. When the projection ended, the room was silent. Serica studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to the watching soldiers. "You have seen it? This human did not harm the star. He fought to keep her alive." There was a low murmur among the guards. It was rare for anyone to win Serica's acknowledgement, let alone a human. But her next words cut through any sense of relief. Daniel might have felt. However, she continued, "He touched what no outsider is permitted to touch. He crossed into the bloodline of my house. This cannot be ignored." Daniel's relief vanished. "So what happens now? You kill me anyway." Serica stepped closer, so close he could see the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes. "No. Killing you would dishonor the debt my daughter owes you." She turned away, her cape sweeping the floor. "By the laws of the Vihar, you have two choices. Leave this place and never return to my territory, or stay under my watch, bound to my house until the debt is repaid." Daniel frowned. "Bound to your house? What does that mean?" "It means," she said, looking back over her shoulder, "you will live, but your life will be mine to command." The girl jumped from her seat, running to Daniel's side. She gripped his hand and looked up at her mother. In broken English, she said, "He stays. I want him to stay." The entire hall went quiet. For the star heir to speak so openly was no small thing. Serica studied her daughter for a long moment, then turned back to Daniel. "It seems the choice has already been made. Human." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He wasn't sure if staying was survival or stepping into a different kind of danger, but when he looked down at the girl's small hand in his, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Fine," he said. "I'll stay." Serica gave a single, sharp nod. "Then prepare yourself. Life under my roof is not easy, even for those I do not hate." The guard stepped back, and the tension in the air shifted. It wasn't safety, not yet, but it wasn't certain death either, as they left the hall. The girl kept hold of Daniel's hand, her pendant glowing faintly in the dim light. Far behind them, Serica watched their retreating figures, her mind already calculating what this human's presence would mean for her and for the war too. Come. Across the stars, Daniel had been aboard many ships in his life, cargo freighters, mining haulers, even a patrol cutter once, but nothing compared to Serica Vihar's flagship. It wasn't just a warship, it was a floating city. The corridors were wide enough for small vehicles to pass through. Balconies overlooked training yards where soldiers in black and gold armor drilled in perfect formation. Massive banners bearing the Vihar crest hung from the ceilings, swaying slightly in the recycled air. From the moment he left the throne hall, Daniel felt eyes on him. Soldiers, servants, officers, all paused in their tasks to watch the human walking beside the star. Some looked at him with open suspicion, others with curiosity. None smiled. The girl stayed close, her small hand gripping his. The glow from her pendant reflected faintly on the metal walls as they walked. Serica led the way without speaking. Her presence was like a living shield. No one dared block her path. When they reached a set of tall doors, she stopped. "This will be your quarters," she said, turning to Daniel. "You will remain here unless given leave. Guards will be posted outside." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Prisoners' quarters." Her golden eyes narrowed. "Alive quarters. Don't confuse the two." She turned to the girl. "You may visit him, but your training will not be neglected." The girl nodded reluctantly. Daniel noticed how her gaze lingered on her mother as if measuring the space between them. There was affection there, but also something like defiance. The room was larger than he expected. A bed, a table, a wash station, even a viewport showing. The curve of a distant planet below, for someone who'd nearly been executed a few hours ago. It felt almost luxurious. The girl wandered around the room, expecting everything with quiet fascination, as if she'd never been in such a simple space before. She stopped at the viewport, pressing her small hands against the glass. "That's your world?" Daniel asked. She shook her head. "Training planet. Soldiers live there. Harsh." He studied her for a moment. "You've never been outside." "Your mother's empire, have you?" She tilted her head. "No. But now I want to." Later that day, the guards brought food, not for him alone, but for both of them. The girl ate slowly, still recovering from her injuries. Daniel noticed the way the guards watched them the entire time, as if expecting him to do something wrong. When the guards left, she leaned closer to him. "Mother, we'll test you." Daniel gave a short laugh. "What else is new?" "She thinks humans are weak," the girl continued. "She will want to see if you can fight or obey." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "What do you think?" The girl didn't hesitate. "You are not weak. You are different." She will see. 2 days later, Serica summoned him. The chamber was not the throne hall, but a smaller, round room filled with alien weapons mounted on the walls. The floor was marked with combat circles. "You will spar," she said, without preamble. Daniel frowned. "Spar? With who?" She pointed, and a soldier in full armor stepped forward, holding a long staff tipped with a blade. Daniel sighed. Of course. The fight was short, but brutal. The soldier was faster and stronger, but Daniel fought smart, keeping his distance, using feints, waiting for the right moment. When the opening came, he disarmed his opponent and had him on the floor in under a minute. The room went silent. Serica's eyes narrowed. But not in anger, in interest. "You fight like someone who does not care about glory," she said. "I care about winning," Daniel replied. Over the following weeks, the tension between them shifted. Serica still commanded him sharply, but her tone no longer dripped with hostility. Sometimes she even asked for his opinion, though she never admitted it aloud. The girl was always around. She followed him through the ship's vast halls, showing him places even some soldiers avoided the gardens where rare alien plants grew, to the high observation decks where the stars felt close enough to touch. One night, standing at the viewport, she said softly, "You could have left me. Many times, why didn't you?" Daniel looked at her, then back at the stars. "Because I've seen enough people die. And I wasn't going to let it happen to you." She smiled, small, but real. The peace didn't last forever. One evening, alarms blared across the ship. A comm system barked orders in a language Daniel didn't understand. But he didn't need a translation. Something was wrong. The girl grabbed his arm. "Enemy ships. They want me." The doors to his quarters slid open, and Serica stepped inside, armor on, blade at her side. Her gaze locked on him. "You will stay with her," she ordered. "Us." They breached the ship. "You will protect her, with your life." Daniel stared at her. "And if I fail?" Her eyes hardened. "Then I will cross the stars to make them regret it." "But I do not think you will fail, human." Hours later, the attack was repelled. But the moment stuck with Daniel. But the way Serica had looked at him when she gave him the order. Not as a prisoner. Not as an outsider. As someone she trusted. Weeks turned into months. Daniel became a strange fixture. Aboard the flagship, still watched closely, still treated with caution, but no longer whispered about as the human who stole the star. Now some called him the human who kept her safe. And in quiet moments, when Serica stood beside him at the viewport, watching the endless black beyond, He wondered if the warlord who had once sworn vengeance might be starting to see him as something else entirely. Final hook for sequel, Far Away. Deep in enemy space, a rival warlord received a message. The star lives, she travels with a human. He smiled darkly. Then we will take them both.